Hello, very good evening. Welcome to the studio. It's the proverbial packed studio tonight. It's a celebratory show, and why not? Here we are. Sheffield football has seldom had it so good. Well, certainly not in recent years. Sheffield United, 9th in the Premier League. Sheffield Wednesday, 3rd in the Championship and facing second placed Leeds United at Hillsborough over the weekend. You've got to enjoy the good times, and these certainly are good times in this footballing city. We look at two huge games coming up this weekend. There's the Tevez affair. There's a cloud in the studio. It's that overhang from, well, 12 years ago when Sheffield United were last in the Premier League, and those of a certain age, James Shield is from the Sheffield Star, and we sort of dined out on that for 2 or 3 years. In fact, I made a lot of money out of that.
I'm glad you did, Alan. Yeah.
You didn't so much, did you, with a full-time job? But certainly it wasn't too bad for my bank balance. Or Sheffield United in the end. But the point was they lost the Premier League status. Grinning like a Cheshire cat over there is Mr. Agent these days, Jon Newsome. Now, a late call up, and I'm really obliged to you because I thought I'll never get away with just having two Blades guests and James Gregg coming in part 2. Sheffield Wednesday v Leeds is such a huge fixture, and who played for both?
Yep.
Mr. Newsome?
Absolutely, yeah. Big game.
Not going to tell us where his heart really lies, but...
Well, as I said earlier, I've been a Sheffield Wednesday fan from, knee high to a grasshopper, haven't I? So yeah. I'm never going to change my allegiance, you know that, but ideally, I'd love them both to do well, wouldn't I? I'd love them both to get promotion this year, and what a Premier League that would be.
We'll see if we can get him off the fence about the Hillsborough game this weekend. John Garrett.
Alan Biggs.
Yeah, good evening, and nice to see you as well. I'm sorry that you're third in line for the introduction.
Story of my life, I'm afraid, Alan.
But here's a book which John has written called Sheffield United, Folklore and Fables. You're a fond of information, knowledge and stories about the Blades. And
so I'm told, and some of them you can actually print as well, I'm believing.
And even speak. The ones you can speak on the radio, on the TV even, you can mention to us the other night. Bit of a labour of love, John, that?
Yes and no. I mean, it comes from the programme article I've written for about 10 years. And it's not the first thing I've done for the programme, but it's been the most consistent. Cookie had me doing it. And really, we'd done a compilation about 5 or 6 years ago, went down really, really well. Opportunity came to have a look through and pick some of the best ones out from the remaining 5 or 6 years, and they have the results. So hopefully people will like it.
So it's not new then? It's all old,
what are you saying?
Stuff.
Yeah, Perry's no. It's the greatest hits, Biggsy, that.
It's the greatest hits, yeah. And it's from the Danny Hall stable of Vertical Editions.
It is indeed, yeah.
It's out well in time for Christmas. Talk to you about 1 or 2 stories in it. Which game are we going to take first? Let's tell you, and you might have a view on this as well, John. It's been a long time. It's 12 years since the Tevez affair. Well, probably 10 years since it was finally kind of resolved, but there's a feeling ahead of going to West Ham on Saturday that actually, even though nobody's whipping it up now, it wasn't really resolved, was it, as far as Sheffield United were concerned?
No, I don't think it was, because clearly people are still talking about it now. And I know the two clubs have played since. I think it was 2014, wasn't it, in the League Cup. But I think this one's got even more resonance because it's a Premier League fixture. And of course, it was Premier League status that Sheffield United lost on the back of what happened at West Ham with Carlos Tevez, and of course don't forget Javier Mascherano to begin with as well. So
we got deeply in it, and I know you can be biased when you're covering one side of the story, as obviously you were covering the Sheffield United side of the story, so was I in 1 or 2 national papers, and the more I got into it, the more I kind of sided with this argument that this blatantly wasn't fair, that what happened, that the West Ham were allowed to survive in the Premier League.
Do you know what? I actually don't think you can be accused of bias in this, because right. I think it was pretty clear what went on. I think it was pretty clear West Ham in the end accepted that they'd broken the rules, and ultimately the fine that they got, I think if you'd have offered them that at the start of the process, if you'd have said to them, listen, you can break the rules and sign 2 world-class players and get fined up £5.5 million at the end of it, I think they'd have probably said, you know what, that sounds like a fair deal. But ultimately, as we all know, and I know the Premier League's moved on since then, I know the money's got an awful lot bigger, but we were still talking big bucks even then in relative terms. And, Fines, I think we've seen it on all sorts of issues. Carlos Tevez, even looking at clubs and countries that are getting, accused and found guilty of sort of racist abuse from the stands from their own supporters. Fines don't really touch the sides in football now, and ultimately people are playing for points, not pound notes. So,
and the ultimate punishment, it was not just losing status, but 12 years of isolation. I know, obviously, Sheffield United could have saved themselves, should have saved themselves, but that's one heck of a sliding doors moment, John, for the football club.
Yeah, you talk as a member of staff and a fan.
Yeah.
And as you say, I mean, the damage and the fallout from the relegation itself, I don't think any of us ever thought it would go on as long as it did. But certainly behind the scenes in the corridors of Bramall Lane and the tea room, and we saw people's jobs ultimately lost from United losing Premier League status. And I think that, looking back, James and I have talked about it many, many times, when you see the tea lady made redundant and girls in the ticket office, and that's the real human fallout of that. It cascaded down so much further than the sort of corridors of Lancaster Gate or Upton Park as it would have been then. And it's only now we're seeing the green shoots of recovery the last 2-3 seasons. But it was devastating for the club, yeah, and no amount of money at that point sort of repaired the damage done to, I suppose, reputation, to a degree, ego for the club. And I don't mean we're not an egocentric football club, but yeah, it's the wounds took a long time to heal, and some of them are still very much open, yeah.
Well, that's interesting. That's a very valid point, very serious point about the people who lost their jobs. How many, memory kind of fades, but how many were we talking about, do you think?
It was a good number of people who went in the end.
Yeah.
And probably 24, 25 members of staff behind the scenes at Bramall Lane. And some of them had worked for the club for a long time and worked hard, been loyal. There were no part, sort of in every war there's casualties, I suppose you'd say, but for me personally, I mean, I was affected by it at one point as well. It was a terrible time, and I never ever thought, I keep saying the healing process, it's taken so long to heal, it's untrue. I never really thought we'd see it that bad.
No, back in the Premier League kind of brings back the memory of it,
Yeah.
but also the healing process can start to begin. What's your sort of outside view, Jon Newsome, having sort of observed that at the time, and you can take a step back from us because we were so close to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because it's not something that I looked into in great depth, but, hearing even the guys speak about it this evening and other people, it's quite obvious. For me, I think the FA and when there are issues, you're talking about racism and, talk about this, Spygate last year, and they seem to have a habit of getting it wrong time and time again. There's not many occasions that we say, they've done well there. They've come down, with the right punishment, or and ultimately, I think as a player, when and I was relegated when I was at Norwich City. It's incredibly difficult to get back into that Premier League, and I think that gets underestimated quite a lot, really. And I think if you get relegated from any league, you go from being one of the worst teams in that league, and league tables don't lie, and then you get relegated, and everybody's got this idea that we'll bounce back next year. Well, it's very difficult to go from being one of the worst teams in the league to, in a space of 8-10 weeks, becoming the best team in the league below. Football's not that easy.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near that easy, and that's why I think teams do get relegated, really struggle, to keep their head above water and to make an impact the following, especially from the Premier League, because you end up losing 2 or 3 of your key players. They go off and get poached again somewhere else, and it's a rebuilding process.
So even at this distance, it doesn't sit right, does it?
I don't think it does. No, and I think the punishment should be vaster and as James was saying, points and your.
Well, take 3 points away, or even a couple, then was change, wouldn't it?
Well, that's absolutely right. And when you looked, I was doing a piece on this today, and when you looked at the impact that Tevez had during, towards the end of the season. This wasn't a player on the periphery of that team. This was a guy who was involved in more than half of the goals that they scored. I think scored half of the goals that they scored themselves as well. So that this was a guy with a big impact. But just touching on something John said there as well about the authorities sometimes getting this wrong. One of the things, and I can remember this stunned me at the time, and I still can't quite get my head around it. And I get why sort of Sheffield United found it difficult to talk about at the time, but was when West Ham had held their hands up and admitted that we've, probably quite knowingly, I would imagine, broken these rules here because they're there in black and white for people to see, was that then the Premier League turned around and said, well, you've pleaded guilty to this, you can carry on playing the guy. Yeah. Which just seemed absolutely ridiculous at the time. Yeah, and I can't quite get that. And I think the other thing as well that you said, you've seen it with, ultimately, as John said, the people that you do really feel sorry for is the ordinary people who work at a football club who've got mortgages who depend on this. I know it's the same with players as well. But possibly they might find it a little bit easier if they've performed well to get another job. But I think if you're a player as well and you have been relegated, you almost want to know that I gave my all, but it's because I just perhaps wasn't quite good enough, or we weren't good enough. Yeah. To be relegated in those circumstances where you're thinking, you know what, this possibly isn't actually anything I've done, it's something that's gone on elsewhere. Yeah. That must be really tough to come to terms with.
They could and should have saved themselves at the end, and not least in the Wigan game, but there is still the argument. Happier times, we're going to talk about West Ham, Sheffield United as it is in 2019, and Sheffield United sitting pretty in the Premier League after we've introduced the huge game at Hillsborough between two of your old teams. And of course, you last weekend you were up the road at Elland Road, weren't you? Enjoying a birthday bash.
Yeah, centenary. So it was a big occasion last week, and I feel very fortunate that I was included in that, really. And the Thursday night we had a gala dinner, and there, there's legendary status, isn't there? And there's ex-players, and I'm an ex-player, and there were some real legends there. And at one point we were sat. Me and Neil Aspin were stood in the bar. We were talking to Joe Jordan, Johnny Giles, and Eddie Gray. And we looked at each other and we had to pinch ourselves a little bit because, and have a room full of these chaps, and credit to the football club as well that Leeds United did it in the right way as well. They got everybody back from every generation, be it a good generation or not so good generation, and celebrated the entirety of anybody and everybody who played for the football club.
You don't need to feel inferior. You were part of a title-winning team under.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I played a little part in that. I played the last 8-10 games of the season, and when you stand next to the lads who played 42 games that year, they're the ones.
They've got Gordon Strachan was there, of course. Norman Hunter from further back.
Yeah.
Alan Clark, I think.
Alan Clark was there. Paul Reaney.
Mick Jones.
Yes, Mick Jones at Sheffield United.
Yeah. There was
Tony Curry.
Tony Curry.
Yeah. He wouldn't have wanted us to mention that, would he?
He won't mind.
So there were, and there were some, Robbie Keane was there, Jonathan Woodgate, Tony Yeboah, Lucas Radaby. So, some of the more modern players were there as well, and it was great. It was a fantastic evening.
Okay. Sheffield Wednesday, quietly up into third in the Championship, not fancied. Leeds have always been fancied right from the start. They're second. What is it, a point between them? What a game, what a setup.
It's teed it up great, hasn't it? They're always good games, aren't they? They're always good matches, and there's been a bit of a niggle over the last couple of seasons, I think. But I think Sheffield Wednesday have come up on the rails, haven't they? They sort of like snuck in there without anybody noticing them, really. And
has anybody played well in the Championship consistently? I don't think any team.
I don't think they have. I do a bit of work at Elland Road for Leeds, and I've seen them quite a lot. And they've got their own issues. How they play. Scoring goals is a problem for them at the moment. The best team I've seen this season has been West Brom. They came to Elland Road, and the second half they played them off the park. They were very, very good. And I just think I don't think the Championship is as strong this season as it was last season.
It's a Championship, a division with an opportunity to get out for any team in the, including Sheffield Wednesday. We know the limitations, and we've talked about them, haven't we, in terms of the squad needing freshening. But there's an opportunity there.
Oh, massive opportunity. And like I say, you know, West Brom, I can see them maybe pushing on and doing well. If Leeds get it right at the top end of the pitch and start scoring goals and converting the chances that they create, I can see them pushing on. But then you look at that table and there's probably another 8, 9, 10 teams who will all fancy the chances of maybe snooking that last automatic place or getting into the playoffs. And you know, we know what a prize, you know, what a massive prize it is.
We'll talk in part 2 about the job that Gary Monk is doing, the way he's going about it, what the prospects are, team selection wise, at the weekend. But Sheffield United, every game is just one to get excited about and look forward to, and another big ground to go to. City of London Stadium for you. Yeah. You must be loving this season, the places you're getting to. And the
yeah, I am. I'll be putting on a bit of weight as well with the food in the press rooms. But yeah, it's no, it is, isn't it? But this is what you work hard for, and it's. I think it's not just. Listen, I mean, it's great for us. It's great for the players. I think it's even better for the fans. And without being too sort of corny and cliched about it, I think it's a reward for those 12 years that we've just been talking about as well, because there was an awful lot of them that stuck by them as well during that period. But it's interesting as well because obviously Sheffield United enjoying great success at the moment and have got that opportunity. I think with the chances and the opportunities that Premier League status brings now to really cement themselves, not just on a national stage, but on a European stage in terms of the profile and a world stage as well. Totally. I don't think it's any surprise that you're seeing Sheffield Wednesday actually doing well at the moment either, because I've always got this theory that I can't actually back up with stats at all, but when one club does well, I think it does give the other one a kick, and it just sort of perhaps focuses a few minds, not just behind the scenes, but I'm pretty sure on the pitch as well, to look at it and think, do you know what, we quite fancy a bit of that. And I think certainly you see it in 2 club cities. I think those 2 clubs possibly need each other a little bit more than they. I think it brings it home
as well. You know, I mean, we were just talking before we came on air. You know, it's a generation, isn't it? You know, I've got kids at 24 and 22, and they've been both Sheffield Wednesday fans. They've never ever witnessed the big teams coming to town. You know, they've never had the Liverpools and the Arsenals and the Man Uniteds, and to have a generation not experiencing that, and now, you know, effectively the other side of the city's experience it. You look on that with a bit of envy, don't you? And all of a sudden, actually, we really want a bit of that. And yeah, I think it's a massive point.
Yeah, the catering's improved at that level, and you talked about putting on weight. John seems to have lost weight over here.
Thank you for that.
But it must be an absolute joy for you, you know, as a club employee going around to these grounds, but also seeing, you know, the kind of performance that I don't think any regular Blades watcher was surprised about the other night. The result.
No.
I think we played well all season, and James has said it. There's been games where I think Liverpool was another great example. You know, no justice. We didn't get anything out of that game. The football we played was superb, and I think it's a bit of a culture shock coming to Bramall Lane. It's still a tight ground. It's a proper football ground, proper fans, and the noise when they get behind them is incredible. And there's quite a few teams coming to our place this season that are not used to grounds like that. We're not sanitised. It's not the same as other Premier League clubs.
There's a rawness about the atmosphere that creates a little bit of intimidation, isn't there?
Yeah, I think what you see there at the moment as well is a team and a crowd almost sort of working in tandem as well. Because one of the great things for me, they don't have to impress me. I don't mean it like that, but that has really impressed me. Is that you've seen a team come up. We all know the financial sort of shortcomings. We all know the big gulf in, financial resources between a team like Sheffield United and the teams at the top of the table. But And you especially see that in the forward players.
10 seconds.
But it's great to see a team having a go. There is no point in playing a game of attack versus defence against.
I'll talk about Pellegrini's comments today about West Ham in part 2. Go on, part 1. All these guys will be here. See you in 5. See you.